Hello and good day. This is the Bible Bard with episode 171, Strange Things About Suffering and Trials. This is the Bible Bard, and here's the place we're at today. Today we come to a topic most unbelievers like to discuss because they think the Bible has no answer. The Bible's look at human suffering and trials is what we're discussing. And we should know in our lesson that human suffering is the central accusation leveled against the biblical concept of a good God who is impeccably moral, ethical, and just. The essence of the complaint against God is as follows. If the God of the Bible is perfectly good, knows the horrors of human suffering, and has the power to prevent it, why does he permit so much suffering, especially of innocents? Now, philosophically, this is a very difficult argument to overcome. The abundance of natural evils in the world, like, say, leukemia or a congenital disease for an infant, or earthquakes or droughts, parasites infesting people, this all makes the world a place of immense suffering that produces nothing of benefit to anyone. Why must we attempt to find a divine reason for every terrible event that occurs in the world? We often cannot, because no such reason can be identified. And worse, why does the Bible say, unbelievers ask, that the Bible's God actively inflicts suffering on people? Most of these criticisms of God, Christianity, and the suffering take the form of rhetorical questions. Did you notice that? We know that rhetorical questions usually conceal a different argument than the obvious one that is presented. For example, in the above example of criticism, the assumption is made that a good being must, if they're good, eliminate evil, or that if the being is omnipotent and has power, that being has no relevant limitations, so they can do that. They can eliminate evil. Timing, of course, is crucial. Divine goodness is made to require by us the immediate prevention of every painful event. The Bible does not say that God's principal purpose is to give every human being the longest, safest, most pleasurable earthly life possible. That's kind of an assumption behind the criticism. Creating criticisms that judge God according to the purpose the Bible or God himself is never assigned to, as always, is done by critics who don't read the Bible for themselves. For example, a better biblical question might be, what is God doing about evil, about justice, morality, and judgment? There are answers in the Bible to those questions, and the Bible Bard continues to supply biblical information to listeners to the podcast. Yes, God could simply force everyone to do good. But is that consistent with what the Bible reveals about God's nature and purpose? It is not. Discussion. If one does not know how the Bible describes God, one can, and people do, make foolish responses to suffering, like, quote, I cannot identify a sufficient reason for this suffering, therefore God could not have one. Boy. Or if I, who am not good, have more compassion on sufferers than God does, how can God be good? These are two sample questions of mockery that point out the Bible's God and present him as a terrible person. The Bible's God is presented as a person whose being and position place him beyond comprehension and understanding in the word itself. Here's a sample quote. For my thoughts, God is speaking, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heaven is higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. God says, and quote Isaiah 55:8-9 from the NIV. Now, how do we explain such a verse? A metaphor might be, we can use a metaphor to explain it, to give you some idea of what's going on here. A metaphor we could use is of an infant standing in their crib. They are crying for mommy to come and pick them up, to feed them, to change their diaper. Yet she doesn't come. And the infant cries out, how unfair, how unthoughtful she is, how unfeeling to the child's suffering. The infant does not know where mother is or what she's doing at the moment. Yet they feel entirely justified in their complaint. A verse from Isaiah provides metaphorically the answer from the infant's mother. You, infant, do not comprehend what's going on in the house. You, infant, do not understand in the smallest way mother's provisions for you. You, infant, do not know your own future. How then can you judge mother's person based upon your experience that you had only up to now? As the child grows, the Bible tells us one day they are weaned. That weaned child becomes quiet and content in the mother's presence or absence. The child is no longer demanding immediate satisfaction, but rests securely in a better, though still incomplete, understanding of their parent. Here's how the writer of the psalm says it, quote, my heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me, but I have calmed and quieted myself. I am like a weaned child. I am content. Israel, they call out, it's for anyone. Put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. That's from Psalm 131, verses 1 through 3. An unbeliever may respond to this biblical admonition with irritation and frustration, saying, not fair, you've changed the rules. You are not talking about suffering, but about understanding who you are as a human being and getting a glimmer of who God is. Yes, the Bible says God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all, end quote. That's from 1 John 1:5. Yes, this biblical declaration is beyond human understanding. Yet there it stands. In the face of any human being's difficult life, in the face of human suffering itself, or any explanation given for suffering, God remains morally perfect, with no tiny stain of moral or ethical contradiction. Quote, it says, in him there is no darkness at all, end quote. Summary. We want to compare a couple of other answers to the problem of suffering. In the Buddhist answer, that is, to human beings, that human beings suffer because they cling to personal desires and to things that are impermanent. Through the discipline, the Buddhists say, of the Noble Eightfold Path, a person may overcome attachment and ignorance and ultimately reach nirvana, the state in which suffering ceases. Then we have a different answer, completely opposite that, and the answer of secular humanism, especially the atheistic version. And it's for human intervention rather than God to improve earthly life. The secular humanists warn us not to explain suffering as a religious mystery, but to use reason, science, education, and social reform to understand suffering and reduce it, progressively improving human life. Now we have the Bible's answer to suffering, which begins by reminding us who we are and who God is. God tells us a lot about who we are and tells us much, but not everything about who he is. What the Bible teaches about God remains inaccessible to those who will not read it or listen to it or attempt to understand it. In biblical terms, knowingly dismissing the Bible's answer may be an act of defiance. Psalm 131 compares the humble trust of a believer to a weaned child resting quietly with its mother. The child does not understand where the mother has been or everything she is doing, but it has learned to rest in the character of the one upon whom it depends. Conclusion. A bard is a storyteller who recites traditional texts in the past associated with a particular oral tradition, and I'm here to recite and to amplify what the literature of the Bible says about who is God and who are human beings. So make up your own mind whether you agree or disagree with the Bible's pronouncements, but we're talking about what the literature of the Bible states, the ideas and concepts it presents, because most people have never engaged in biblical thought. Go to www.biblebard.org to download a transcript, listen to another episode from the archive, or get links to other materials and information. Remember, the Bible Bard English podcast is translated into other languages, including Spanish, Hindi, Nepali, Urdu, Swahili, Chigua, and Bengali, which is coming along in translation now, and also Punjabi, which the first 10 episodes are complete, and we're doing more. Support the Bible Bard podcast at our website. Click the Donate tab and make a contribution. Send the Bible Bard any questions or remarks you care to offer to BibleBardUS@gmail.com, and we're glad to hear from you. And thanks in advance. You know how this works. We need you to follow the podcast, subscribe to it, share, and comment on the content from our many, many platforms. Of course, we're on podcast audio platforms, and you can also watch us on video platforms. So until next time, this is the Bible Bard.